What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Trippe. Welcome back to another episode of the REI Live podcast, where we interview the very best real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders all throughout the country. And today, I'm excited to talk to Mr. Casey Ames today. What's going on, Casey?
What's going on?
Casey out of Boise, Idaho. He's got the Boys in the Hood shirt. We think it's Boys in the Hood, but it's Boy space Z. That we were confused on when I met up with him here a couple of weeks ago. Casey, you're doing luxury homes, you're doing apartments, you're doing single family subdivisions. You've got a wholesale company that does 100+ deals a year with one employee. You're also coaching. You've got some students. You're doing some ministry. I want to talk about all that stuff, but holy cow, man! When do you sleep? How do you run all of this? It's incredible what you got going on.
I sleep good. Doesn't mean there was a time that I didn't sleep at all. So I don't know. I hit the ground running, man. I had some stuff go on in my early life. I had a couple people pass away that were really dear to me, and I'm grateful for them. But there was a time that I didn't see it that way. I was kind of riddled with self-pity and some other stuff. And it was just, woe is me. Why wouldn't it have been me and not them type of thing? And it took years to climb that spiritual path. And when I did come out of that, I was just focused. There's no other way to put it. I still am to this day. I'm focused. There's a task at hand. That task is creating as much value as I possibly can. The caveat to that, or the byproduct to that, is we end up doing really well because of what we have going on. But really, money's never, and that's the funny thing, is like money's never been the focal point. It's just been wanting to give the people around me the life that they deserve. And in turn, I've ended up with a wildly amazing life, and I love it. But yeah, I sleep good now. I try to shut it down early in the evening, but there was times I wake up at 4 a.m. and I'd work till 4 a.m., So
Casey, take me back to, because everybody wants to hear the origin story. Everybody wants to know how people got started, and you're doing all this stuff, and just take me back just a few years ago. Because I think I met you, I think it was 2018 where I was speaking.
17.
Was it 17?
Yeah. I think it was 2017.
So
that was that's when I hopped into it.
So you got started in 17. If it was the Wholesale Inc. conference in Orlando is where I met you, correct?
Correct.
So that would have been
18.
That would have been January of 18. So barely, barely into 18. And you weren't doing all this when I met you.
No, I was cold calling.
So this is what you've done and how you've been able to explode what you've been up to is really just a kind of a short amount of time here. Take us back to January 2018. Where were you, and how have you been able to blow this up so fast?
Yeah. So I'll mention God a lot through this, and that isn't fluff. I really am just like grounded in Christ. I just really am. And it wasn't always Christ. It was more, for me, it was just, there was like a bigger power. There was like a higher presence. And I knew like doing things right and integrity and honesty were really crucial. And I had to get that way, right? From what I was explaining I had to like break down and go in within me and be honest with myself. And so December, I started cold calling about 2 months before that wholesaling thing. My parents had opened up well, first of all, they were flipping houses in Phoenix, right? They were insurance agents forever, or not agents, but they worked for an insurance company. And we had some stuff happen in our family, lost a couple people, and some things just went astray. We all did the start over life thing. They moved out to Phoenix, Arizona, and went to start their life over. And they got a really bad deal with this lady on a flip. And anyway, they got a whole bunch of money taken from them. God is good and works in mysterious ways, and shifted them to Brent Daniels. And this was before Brent came out with TTP. And so they were cold calling. They switched to wholesaling. They were doing that. My mom was actually having really good success. She works within my company now. It's our company, but she works within it. We're trying to retire, but she won't retire. And anyway, she was doing about 30K a month in profit. And I remember it was really good. And so we were in this like coming back together stage of our lives. And so we took a trip to Belize. And I just shared this on Brent's podcast the other day, but we took a trip to Belize and kind of basking in our glory, right? We were doing well and everything was on the right track. Come back to Phoenix, Brent had opened up TTP and the Phoenix market had forever changed. Mm-hmm. And I was living in Boise, calling into Phoenix. And my mom was like, you'd be really good at this wholesale thing. And so I started it and I was working 2 jobs for a while. And then I was tithing and God sort of opened up some time, opened up some time in my life. And I was able to cold call a little more. And anyway, to shorten it up, I basically, when they came back in the Phoenix market, they started struggling and it was difficult, but we considered ourselves to be pretty good at acquisition. And so I said to my mom, I was like, no one's doing this in Boise. Like, it's just not happening. There's no systems, there's no processes. No one's got good scripts. They're not getting on motivation. And so let's do it. And so my dad started skip tracing stuff here and I started calling and within like a week, I got my first 20K deal. And that gave me the power to, or I guess the freedom to quit my jobs. And so I quit and I jumped in full time. And I was on a mission at that point. And I was tithing. So you're familiar with the practice. And it's just like one of those things that like, I had 20K I could tithe on, which was scary in some ways, but in some ways liberating. And it just kinetically took off from there. I will back up a little bit. The one thing I did with that 20K deal that I learned in Phoenix was to create value with the wholesalers or with the flippers. I'm sorry.
Create value. So with the flipper?
It just wasn't all about my money. Right. And some would argue the same, but like I could have probably got a 30K assignment, but I wanted to leave a ton of meat on the bone. Cause at that time I was really focused on my buyers list. I wanted really solid buyers. And remember, I just tapped into the market. So I didn't have this like plethora. I didn't know anyone. It wasn't like I knew the network or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I think I sold it probably about like 15K under what I could have sold it for. And then it went over asking 15K. They got in kind of a little bidding war. And I don't do things that way now. I just have a whole bunch of a whole bunch of guys that I call, or men and women that I call. I don't do the list thing. And I have my reasons for that. But so I created value for them. Well, then it was like, I had a whole bunch in the pipeline, right? Because that was the thing, fill up the pipeline and then blast the pipeline. And so I had this big pipeline. And so I just told them right when I threw that one, I was like, oh, we have a whole bunch more coming. And I was just like sailing, and sure enough, we started popping them right and left. And that turned into that first year, we probably did 70 or something like that, 60 or 70. We were just on a rampage.
Would that have been 2017 or 2018?
2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it would have been when I came back from Wholesale Inc. In Florida is when we kind of reset. We hit the reset button probably about a month, 2 after that. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that was that. And, I helped people a lot in the beginning. So I had all these wholesalers that were doing like 1 a month, maybe. Right. They're like, how are you getting all these? And I'm like, for me, it's always been motivation. I don't care about the timeline, the price, any of that stuff. It to me, I always take them down rabbit holes and it's all about the motivation. And then I get all my other questions answered through that motivation. Right.
Yeah. Well, Casey, so I definitely want to get to the, what you've been doing since 2018, 19, 20, and how you got into luxury and how you started, flipping houses, getting into apartments and subdivisions. I want to get into all that just a little bit, for the sake of time. I really want to dig deep on this one issue though. Do you think today, someone starting out right now, they could do exactly what you did 3 years ago?
Yeah. I think you'd have to work a little bit differently. I'm telling you, man, God's been good to me. It was almost like I broke through. They call them like, what's his face call them? Calls them breaking points or whatever it is, breakthrough moments. Anyway, spiritually, I hit a breakthrough and it was like God needed me to trust him. And once I committed to trusting him, then he opened the floodgates for me. But I will say yes, because I have a student Ryan Wymier, and I only say his name because it's starting to become in the light a lot because he's everywhere now. He's on podcasts everywhere and stuff. This guy crushes it. And he's been doing it for, I don't know, 2 years or something. He's been working with me for a year. This guy absolutely crushes it. And he started out from scratch.
And this is primarily cold calling.
Yeah, he cold calls primarily, but what I've been teaching him is to network more. My bread and butter is networking now, and we could get into that if you want. But basically, we used to cold call. I had several cold callers, several acquisition managers, all that stuff. And then I realized real quickly that sorry, I'm trying to get rid of this screen. I realized real quickly that if I could just get out and network, I was getting most of my deals from the networking. And so so that's why now I'm so lean. That's why we only have like one employee and because like 85%, 90% is networking. But to answer your question, yeah, totally. Cause he crushes it. I mean, we're talking big years, like 7-figure years. He's crushing it. And he's only been doing it a couple of years.
So Casey, you're doing today, right now, as we're speaking in, October of 2021, as we're speaking right now, you're doing on average 100+ wholesale deals a year with one employee.
Yeah, I say one employee because we have one payroll employee, right? My mom helps run comps and do some stuff like that. And my dad sends all the dispo out and sends it to, well, I do the dispo as far as the buyers, but he sends it to title, gets all the documents and takes care of all that. But we've been doing this for long enough now that it's on autopilot, it's like deal comes in and we have SEO going, but like deal comes in, acquisition manager acquisitions it up, get it locked up. I call one of the buyers, boom, send it to title. It's a done deal. And like we did one yesterday and I worked on it for like 5 minutes, probably. It was a $30K assignment and came in. We went out and offered, got the deal, sent the assignment over to the flipper. My dad sent it to title and it's a done deal. And I'm not saying that's a scalable model, right? But that's not our bread and butter. I will say it's the foundation because it feeds all the other companies. But we just kind of learned to run it lean. And what we love about it is it's all net profit. I think people overstretch and they're like, oh, I'm going to build this big team. And then they realize that like all this money's out the door,
Well, Casey, a lot of it is marketing. A lot of it's going to be the marketing budget typically when these big wholesale companies are spending, tens of thousands of dollars in their marketing. You mentioned SEO. What is the primary marketing source or marketing sources that you are using today in the wholesale business for acquisitions?
My luxury brand and my network, because, and this is, and Jason Lewis in Utah. Oh, fantastic person. Anyway, he's brilliant. He's a brilliant mind. He runs probably the biggest wholesale. Well, I wouldn't even say probably. He runs the biggest wholesale company in Utah. But as far as numbers go, but the thing is like I close quick. We do well with money, so I can close within 3 days. I don't need to like go do this big process or anything. I can close within 3 days. Doesn't matter if it's 300,000 or 3 million. We can close quick. And I only say that because we do a lot of multi-million-dollar deals in our wholesale company that have humongous wholesales on them. Like we're talking like massive wholesale deals, but it might be I wholesale a subdivision, or it might be I wholesale in a 200-unit apartment building or something like that, right? So closing quick really helps because people will send you their stuff if they need it closed. Knowing that I buy a tremendous amount of inventory and I have a ton of students that I feed inventory. Everybody knows that, right? And so they'll just send me deals all day, every day. And so it's really because of our flip business that we're able to do that.
And that just that's over time, right? Like to build a brand like that and to build kind of the notoriety in the community, your trustworthiness in the community, doing what you say you're going to do. You've just done it over and over and people just expect it.
Yeah. That's the big part, is do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
If you say you're going to close it, close it.
So some people, depending on who is listening to this and where they're listening to this, I'll just take my city, for instance. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, and our average sales price on the MLS is about $250,000, maybe $260K. Okay. But typically speaking, we're sitting here talking about wholesaling $100,000 to $200,000 properties.
Mhm.
Is it a mindset shift, and is it a market, or maybe it's market specific, but is it a mindset shift to go from wholesaling 100, 200, $300,000 houses versus you mentioned like a $3 million house? Is it a mindset shift, or do you need to have more in place to be able to do wholesale subdivisions, wholesale apartment buildings, wholesale commercial stuff, wholesale this bigger stuff?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to box somebody in by saying like, yes, it's a mindset shift, but really that's a brilliant question. It is a mindset shift. And yes, you do have to have some things in place. You have to be sure that you have the money, or that you know somebody that has the money to close these deals. Like, you can't mess with people when they're playing with 7 million or seven figure deals. Like, you just can't mess with them, right? There's not a lot of buyers. I guess that's the thing I would stress on. $200,000 market, you got 40 buyers, right? One guy doesn't perform, you take the earnest, give it to the seller, and then it's the next guy, and then you go. When you're wholesaling a subdivision, if dude doesn't perform, you have to close that and then deal with it, right? And so you do have to have that there. I will say though, it all comes down to how much work you want to put in, how much knowledge do you want to try to gain, right? I studied apartments relentlessly. I studied the horizontal dirt work relentlessly. I studied the subdivisions by failing also, right? I studied the subdivisions because we do subdivisions, and I failed at subdivisions when I first started. I mean, it's just, you're going to experience a learning curve. But now I know all the little facets, so I can weave in and weave out and dip. Yes, but don't stop yourself if you want to do that. Because I would say also in Alabama, your average wholesale is 200,000, but they still have apartment buildings in Alabama, and they still build new construction in Alabama, right?
I guess the
thing is like, go ahead.
Well, okay, so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I guess what I hear you saying is it's almost like a progression it's been a progression for you to kind of get to that point, build that notoriety, build that brand awareness and things like that. Maybe we're sitting here talking today, and maybe you're listening to this, and you could be a wholesaler that's been doing some deals for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Is it now at that point where maybe I've been doing deals for a while, a few years, I've got notoriety in the community, built some brand awareness, and maybe I'm just not taking advantage of it? What would be the next step for that person, Casey?
Yeah, so I always this is what I stress to my students, right? And just for the record, I don't take on a lot of students. These are like people that have came to me that I care about, and so we do it. But I always start with two questions. I say, what do you want your most wildest business life to look like? The perfect business life. What does that look like? Do you work 2 hours a day? Do you work one hyper-focused hour a day? Do you work 8 because you like to work? What do you want your personal life to look like? Your absolute personal life, your wildest dreams. Like, what do you want? Figure out those two things and go do it, right? Like, that might sound kind of corny and like, very motivational speakery, but like at the end of the day, that's how I built my company. Was I said, like, I'm not happy right here. I want to be right here. And I don't want to be working 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. every morning. Like, I need to learn systems. I need to learn processes. I need to learn how to create value for people. So one thing just to get like granular, one thing I did in the wholesale space in the very beginning is I started flipping houses probably 6 months afterwards. But one thing I did, before I started flipping houses, I started hanging out with a lot of the flippers, and I would learn what would go on in the houses. So every classic wholesale deal, I got a wholesale for 120. It's a 20K reno. You can sell it for 220, right? I haven't seen a 20K reno in my market in like years, right? But I still see the wholesale flyers come out and it's a 20K reno, right? I can't even put a kitchen in for 20. And so I really what I would do with my wholesale deals is I would be specific. If it was a 40K reno, then I would put it was a 40K reno, but then I had to do my work getting it cheaper, right? So I could still create that value. And I learned what flipping a house was like, so I could have some empathy for the flippers that were buying these deals, right? Like, put yourself in their shoes, because if they don't win, then you as the wholesaler do not win, right? If they win and you're giving them these deals that have all this meat on the bone, they're going to keep coming back because they love those meaty deals, right?
Casey, and I hear what you're saying, and in theory, I completely agree with you. there's so many buyers in the market today though. So a lot of folks are just like, I don't care. I don't care. And this may be a mistake, but I don't care that the buyer doesn't come back to me or necessarily come back. I don't care that the buyer goes out of business. I don't care. There's so many buyers. I'm going to squeeze this, turnip as hard as I can.
Yeah. To each their own. That's not how I built what I have. You know what I mean? You make a quick buck. Is it going to last? Right. Yeah. All the people that you and I hang out with, they're not talking about making money. They're talking about preserving money, you know? So I'm trying to preserve some legacy here. Like, we want to be legendary. And I want people to know that I did great work in the community and other countries and wherever. And I can't do that by trying to make a quick buck and burning bridges. I'm trying to, like, every person I meet, it's like, how can I help you? Right. And you're great at that. What I love about you is you're super present when you talk to you. And, podcast is one thing because we're staring at each other, but like when we're in person, you're very present. It doesn't matter if you were talking to Miss Polly and you were like, you guys just started talking about Alabama basketball or whatever you were talking about way back in the day where you did your internship thing or where you did, what was it? You did the reporter thing,
I wrote for the student newspaper. Yeah.
Yeah, super organic though, but you were like present and you guys had this like great conversation. She'll remember that, right? She'll remember that. That's important. And so I just try to live my life that way. It's like, what can I do? What can I do for you? You know what I mean? And so anyway, you could argue it either way. I know wholesalers that try to make everything and they still sell their deals and that's fine, but we will still be here when the markets turn and they might not be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And you're right about being present. I mean, I think that's something you have to work on because people are pulling, especially when you're at a conference, people are pulling at you and saying hello. And it's very easy to kind of get distracted. And that's something I have to like be conscious of. And I think that you do a good job of that too. So I want to go back to something you said a second ago though. And then we're going to move on. But you said, be sure you have the money. Like when you're saying you're going to go and close on one of these maybe bigger properties, be sure you have the money. Casey, how were you sure in the beginning when you first started doing this? Maybe your first bigger, kind of bigger valued deal. How were you sure? What did you do?
I had the conversations prior to the deal. Right. And that kind of goes off the trust thing. That kind of goes off the build value thing. That kind of goes off the credibility of always providing value to this person. And then they just learn to trust you. This particular person lends money. He just had never lent money to me. The cool thing about owning a wholesale company, especially when you go deep, is that your deals have pretty good equity in them. So it makes it easier to get loans. Right. And so what I did is I just said, hey, we're going to start flipping a couple houses in this market. And my parents had already flipped. Remember that they had flipped in Phoenix. So I not only was hanging out with flippers, but I had somebody to watch me just in case. And not everyone has that luxury. It didn't really turn out that way because at the time I was kind of a control freak with my design and I was like trying to fit and I didn't like people messing with it, but whole nother story. But I just had the conversation before. It's like, hey, if I buy something for $250 and it's a $50K reno, is there a deal that we can work out that you would lend the money? And how quick can you close? Yeah, that's fine. We can do it. And I think at the time I was getting yoinked, right? So like at the time I was paying like maybe 12.2 and then he wanted like a 20% equity split or something, right? To do the deal. And I'm doing all the work, but it gave me a bridge to walk across. But the thing is like, then I do 3, then I do 5. And now all these other lenders got their eye on me because I had taken the systems for my wholesale company and thrown them into my flipping company. And that was always the idea. And that's kind of a good segue into the other section. But I just knew that if I could do the same systems I did in the wholesale company and emulated those in the flipping company, we could do massive volume. So we started doing massive volume. The lenders started coming to me. I didn't come to the lenders. It's that whole Jay Connor thing, right? He's like, I've never asked for money one time in my life. It's like, I don't really ask for it. Yeah, sure. I ask like, hey, can you do this specific deal? But usually they're coming to me and saying like, hey, you're doing incredible stuff. We want to get some money moving, I
want to make sure I got that word correct. You said yoinked?
Yeah. Yanked, yoinked.
Okay.
Yeah. You got it right.
I want to make sure I knew what you were talking about there.
Yeah. I was getting hosed.
let's we got the context for sure. Casey, yeah, let's switch gears to the flipping business. You just said a second ago that that's kind of was your plan, or your is what's kind of what you wanted maybe all along to start flipping houses.
I didn't know what I wanted from the very beginning. I had a goal. Like here, I'll if I can remember exactly what the three were. The three was retire my parents, 5 million in 5 years, and dedicate my life to God. Right. But like, and then I had some like micro goals built into that, like into each one, really. Like there was some granular stuff that I could work towards, but I didn't really know where it was going to take me. How I started the flip business was we had the wholesale business was pretty oiled at this point in time. We were definitely the go-to. And I was coming across these killer deals, and I was watching these flippers, and I wasn't really impressed. Right. And no disrespect. I wasn't that impressed. And I knew that if I could take the systems over and I could do that, then we could do well at the flipping thing. And so I wanted to create more revenues, right? You listen to Trang, you listen to like you listen to Tom, you listen to like anyone who has a decent amount of wealth, that it's always, how many streams do you have? You should have a few different streams of revenue. And we had one, and that was it. And so I needed to start a new stream. Now, I will say this, and I say this every time when we have this conversation. Be careful when you start a second business or third business or fourth business that you do not kill your first business, second business, or third business, because you can kill it really easily. For example, we started the flip business. I was so hyper-focused on the flip business that I stopped consistent training with my acquisition managers and my cold callers. I was doing great training all the time, and they were just slaying it. And then I hopped over, and my focus wasn't there. So I stopped training. Our deal flow went down massively. And so I had to like come back in while I had all these flips. I had to come back in and perform surgery, and we did it, and it worked. We caught it in the right time, but and then I hopped back over. But you can kill businesses if you're not careful. So be careful. Don't just go rushing in to do a million things. Started the flip business. Flip business was going good. We got up to about 5 at a time, and I started really grinding on the systems. And I came up with what is essentially a template. Nothing brand new. I'm sure a million different people do something very similar, but I came up with a task list template that basically allowed us to systemize and process everything in it. And then we were off to the races. And so we ended up doing, I think, our biggest year. And if you ever talk to me, I'm just not a big fan of scaling. And there's several definitions for it, but high volume scaling is not what I'm interested in building and flipping. But at one point in time, we were doing like 70, I think, a year. And so we were doing like 20. Yeah, we were doing like 20 site. Like at one point in time, I had like 22 flips going at once. And I don't wish that on anyone. I was miserable. I was working like, 16, 17-hour days. I felt like I was being pulled in a million directions. And here's the funny thing is, like, you read Howard Shore, I had so many leaky buckets. Like I could have done 10 efficiently and probably made just as much money. But money was just flying out, and I just didn't even know it. I didn't even know where to start. Right. It's the opposite now, but yeah. And then I'll just kind of keep rolling with it. But then the flip then everyone in the market was doing the same thing. I said, hey, we have to do something different here. And that's when I found my gift that God had given me for design. And I'm extremely grateful for that. But so we just started doing nicer flips. But what I figured out because of the volume we were doing, I would always go like out of state to buy my material, and I would buy it in bulk and I'd get it cheaper and stuff. So it wasn't necessarily that I was spending less money, but I could get a better product for the same amount of money. Right. And we could just put out a better product. So my houses would sell faster. So my sell-to rate was incredible. It's like multiple offers first day on the market type thing. Once again, healthy market. But, and then, so, I went out of town for a little bit, and I came back, and so you'll see me, if you follow me, you'll see me in Mexico all the time. I love going to Mexico. We help an orphanage out over there, and I'm there all the time. One reason I do that, and I usually take my COO with me, which is opposite of what most people would do, but it gives me the best perspective. I sit in Mexico. I completely detach from my business, and I look at my life and I say, what's working and what's not working, right? Well, I knew that I didn't want to do that kind of volume anymore. So I came up with what I call today, like 4 for 400. But essentially it's like, why would I want to do 40 flips for 40K at 1.6 when I can do 4 for 400 at 1.6? And what am I creating by that? And if you know me, time is the precious metric that I measure everything by. I measure everything by time. Like, that's just how I do it. And so we started buying up. So we were buying in like the 3 to 500 market. We started buying in the 7 to 9s.
Casey, is that because that's where you could get that to work, that those numbers to work,
Yep.
where you could do 4 for 400?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And market specific, probably, right? Or I should say area specific. So I hyper hunt. Like, I hyper hunt areas in here. So you'll only see me do stuff on a river with a view, acreage, or like by a golf course. That's all we'll do. That's the only things we'll do now. Unless it's a subdivision or something. But anyway, so that happened. And then I was like, there's way better spreads in new construction, and you can like the systems are so much easier to dial in. It's like the calculation of delegating is like exact, right? It's like framing goes in, trusses go in, sheetrock goes in, blah, 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 blah. Like, and then you're really not in the house that much. So you're in the house for like 3 weeks or something like that. So we started running the new construction. And then it was really like, I was watching some of my friends in Utah playing up in the hills. And at that time, the $1 million market wasn't that healthy in Boise. Stuff was sitting for quite some time. As soon as I saw that market shift, I hopped into the $1 million market. And so now that's just what we do, is we're in that market and we love it.
And Casey, it's all been a progression, right? It's not like you just jumped into one thing just to give it a whirl. It's wholesaling. We're getting the great deals. It's going to lead to, let's do some flips. The flips, we're like, I don't want to kill myself. I feel like we can get higher margins. Let's do fewer. That means we got to rent. We got to go up in price point. And you started dabbling in luxury, and then now you're kind of the experts in the area when it comes to luxury. And then now obviously it led to subdivisions. It's a progression. It's a fast progression though. And that's the thing that I don't really see. And I don't think that our industry sees very often how fast it went. Are you surprised? Are you're just kind of going with the flow? How did it happen so fast?
I'm just a different type of person. That doesn't mean people can't be this way. I pay attention to everything I'm doing. And so you said progression several times. Like, don't get it twisted. I failed this whole time. We bought deep enough that I didn't really lose a whole lot of money, and still haven't to this day. But it's been close. You know what I mean? Like, I know some lenders that won't loan to people unless they've lost money, right? So I understand that, like, you're not going to win every time, but I'm like focused, man. Like, I have a goal, and I am driven, and that goal is not based around myself. And it's, it started for me having enough money to do whatever I wanted with my family, right? And then there's some guys that came up with me, my COO, some of my project managers have been with me since the beginning. Some of my project managers that run construction today used to cold call for me when I first started my wholesale company. Like, my retention rate's crazy, and we take care of these people, but I'm more interested in getting them to be millionaires now. That, like, if I drop the ball, man, like, I'm doing them a disservice, right? Like, I told them I would take them to the top. And if I don't wake up and give it my all, then I feel like I'm leaving them out to dry. Now, there will be a time where they can stand on their own, but it's not yet. I'm still here to do this. And God's put me in this place to be a good steward. And so I'm trying to be the best steward that I can. I don't do it perfect, but I just failed, but I just wasn't afraid of failing. And I was really like, so we talk about like the progression from the 300 to 500 to 700 to 900 to $1 million market subdivisions in the apartments. But understand that with each one of those, I'm refining that system and those processes through each one. And we're getting better. We're plugging those holes in the leaky buckets. We're working with better accountants. We're working with better CPAs. We're hiring better entity attorneys. We're getting better mentors, or maybe not better mentors, but different mentors. And I would say my mentor is superior. He always says this about his mentors, but like, my mentor is superior to me in every way, financially, right? And in business. Like, I surround myself by those people, and people like you. And I told you in Florida, like, when you were grinding, I remember sitting, I don't remember where I was sitting. I remember seeing your success, and you just started opening up the REs, right? You were doing that whole jam. And I was like, dude, I got to switch gears. Like, not acceptable. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is he doing? You know, and I don't judge other people. Like, I judge myself, or I compare myself to myself with my success. But when I see you out there digging holes and grinding, that's why you asked about Ben. The only reason I have that picture there is because I know every single day he's giving glory to God, and he's out there grinding, he's out there creating that. I know every single day. So when I come in my office, he's the first thing I see. You know what I'm saying? So progression, failing, but I wasn't afraid.
Casey, I want to get you out of here on this. And I would typically ask something for someone who's has as much success as you've had in such a short amount of time. I'd ask you, what are some of those keys? I think we've mentioned a lot of those along the way. Keys to success. You've mentioned God, you mentioned tithing. I know that you attribute a lot of that to your success as well, but also just the fact that you're not afraid to fail and you just get back up. For me, I dabbled in flipping houses and it was not for me. I didn't want to do it.
Right.
But I want to kind of get you out of here on this kind of one thing that you've brought up a few times, your drive. I feel like it requires a heavy amount of drive and ambition to get to the level that you have achieved in such a short amount of time. Am I wrong in thinking that? I don't want to just limit people in saying that not everybody can do this or everybody can do this, but there's an element of drive that it takes to get to a certain level. I would love for you to kind of comment on that.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to tell a little story. Do I have like 2 minutes?
You got about 5. Yeah.
Okay. So about a year ago, somebody that was very close to me came into my house. I had just bought my wife a new SUV and for Mother's Day, and my house was pretty nice, right? And we had some nice things in it. And I'm not saying that in any way, but just to illustrate the point. And he came in and he goes, "Oh, must be nice." And then like later on that day, so I had rolled up in my truck, and I brought my truck for like 50 grand or something at the time, right? Like it was nice for what was around, but it wasn't like, it was like, I didn't go spend $1 million on this truck. And I roll up and this guy goes, "Oh, it must be nice to have that truck." And it made me so mad. And because like, you can't outwork me. It's not happening. Like, end of sentence. And so the game has changed, right? Like, I work smarter, not harder now. But even in my smarter working, you can't outwork me. Like, you are not reading more books than me. You are not waking up earlier. You are not treating your wife the way I treat my wife. You are not spending time with your kids the way I spend time with my kids. You are not enjoying every moment, giving glory to God, praying very deeply, meditating very deeply, really clear on what I want. Like, you can't outwork me. So must be nice. Yeah, it's nice. But there was a time that I didn't have anything. There was a time that I didn't have any money. There was a time I couldn't even buy roses for my girlfriend who I had been with for 5 years because I was broke and didn't get the shifts that I wanted, right? Like, so this isn't like I won a lottery ticket thing. I made a choice a long time ago and a commitment to God that I would create as much value in his kingdom as I possibly could if he would open the windows, right? If he would open the floodgates, I would be the best steward that I possibly can. And so I go Bob Berg on this. How do you create value? One creates value by giving more than he expects in compensation, right? And if that's true, and you believe God gave you life, which is the best creation you could possibly have, the only creation that you could possibly have, then you better be doing really, really, really hard, diligent work to try to create more value than what he gave you, which is life. And so I owe it to God to give him everything I possibly can every single day. And I still fail and I'm not perfect, but like, you're not going to outwork me. So it goes back to the drive thing. Like, yeah, you cannot reach this level of success unless you get, I shouldn't say you can't. It would be very hard to reach this level of success by definition, like joy, right? Not monetary. just overall, we live a healthy life. We feed people, we help organizations and charities, and we do it. I just love what we do. Right. And then I still have time to create, which is the luxury brand. I love that stuff. Like, we build huge apartment buildings and we make tons of money doing it. But I love building luxury homes because I get to design. God is a creator. I am a creator in his image, right? And so just to answer your question, like, that's the thing. So yes, it's drive, 100% drive, but just know what you're driving for, I guess. Otherwise you'll burn out. And that was it. It was just like, I just remember that conversation when those two people said that to me. I got so mad. It was like, yeah, it must be nice, but I work really hard for these things that I have, you know what I mean? And so, and I don't mean things by materials. I mean things like time and, vacations that I get to spend with my family and things like that. But anyway, yeah, driven. You have to be driven.
Casey, know what you're driving towards. I love that. And that's a whole separate podcast. That's kind of like, I feel like that's the key to what you just said, because there are people out there with drive, or people, and they're driving towards the wrong thing, and they think they're going towards the right thing, but they can get, I guess, a lot of illusions, I should say, a lot of mirages out there. But Casey, man, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending some of your time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Sharing some of the stuff that you've learned over these past few years. And super impressed, man. Not just not just in the level of the success you've achieved, but really just, it's all the other stuff, man. It's all the stuff that I think a lot of people out there want to give more, and we want to do more, and we can all give right where we are with what we have, for sure. But to be able to, the orphanages and the things that you're doing, giving back to charity, those are the things like legacy. I think you mentioned that word earlier, legacy, purpose. Why am I actually here? I'm not here just to make a bunch of money. I'm here to actually like make a difference. So thank you for sharing all that with us, man. And congratulations on all your success.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I feel the same about you. You're a bright light, man. And you're just always smiling, always super focused. And I love it. And yeah, anything I can do to help, let me know, and have a good day and go get it.
Appreciate you, man. Guys, we love you. And we're so thankful that you joined us for another episode of the REI Live podcast. We are going to see you next time. See you guys.